On that note, we will be getting into our first segment of the day, talking about NFL free agency. We gave some winners and losers yesterday. Probably won't get quite as gimmicky with it today, but we will be talking about some of the biggest moves that took place, starting with the Baltimore Ravens, who signed running back Derrick Henry in what I think is one of the best moves of free agency up to this point. Henry was signed to a 2-year deal worth $16 million and given $9 million guaranteed. He is obviously not quite the same level of dominance that he was for a lot of those years in Tennessee, but I do still think that he has a lot left in the tank. I think that this is a great price, especially considering DeAndre Swift got similar money from the Bears. I think that the Ravens making this type of move is a game changer of some sorts, because he is absolutely the best running back that has been there in Baltimore for a handful of years now. And again, no, he is not the offensive player of the year caliber that he was a handful of years ago, but he has been able to stay very healthy considering the workload that he's been given over the course of the past few years. And his production, while it's not quite the same, it still has not dropped off in a drastic way. Excuse me. But he has led the league in rush attempts in 4 of the last 5 seasons. He did play just 8 games in 2021 when he was dealing with a foot injury, but even in that season, 8 games, 937 yards, and 10 touchdowns still. So he was just 63 yards of 1,000 despite playing in only 8 games. If you take out that injured season, he has rushed for 1,000 yards in every season going back to 2018-19. He has also scored at least 10 touchdowns, even including that injured season in 2018-19 as well. So you get the point. He is very good. This Ravens offense was dominant in the run game last season, significantly better than any other offense in the league in terms of running the football. Now you add the bruiser that is Derrick Henry, and I do think that this makes them so much scarier. I think that it makes Lamar Jackson potentially more dangerous. We saw the way that in Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill was able to actually elevate his play due to the fact that he had Derrick Henry in the backfield. He was able to utilize an offense that was very much predicated on play action passes. And now with the running threat between Derrick Henry, but also with Lamar Jackson keeping the ball himself, it's going to be freezing opposing defenses, having them crowd the front box more and more. And it should open up more along the back ends for Lamar Jackson and this passing game. Now, they have not yet added a receiver to the core yet. Zay Flowers, of course, had a great rookie season for them. They are going to need more. Nelson Aguilar became a free agent for them. They had Odell Beckham Jr. as well as a free agent. Devin Duvernay, who played more so special teams, but had stints with Baltimore where he was a little more of a focus in the passing game. But they still do have some gaps at receiver. Not anything I don't think that they can fix during the draft as well, but it would be nice to see them go out and get another receiver as well. Because when it comes down to whether or not you believe the Ravens are a true contender, it is pretty much predicated on that passing game, where we've always known that Lamar Jackson can scramble, run the ball himself. It's a matter of, can he take the steps he needs to be a passer to compete in the playoffs? And I did think that if you look at the regular season, I know that it's hard, we get caught up in recency bias and everything, but this was far and away Lamar's best season from a pure passing standpoint. If you just look at some of the difficulty of throws that he was able to make, I thought that this was going to be the year where he really proved the doubters wrong, and unfortunately that was not really the case. He threw for a career high yards this season, career high completion percentage, so he made some strides in terms of passing, but can he do it in the playoffs? The defense has been able to hold themselves together pretty well. Now they lose Geno Stone to the Bengals. They lose Patrick Queen, who signed with the Steelers yesterday. So those are losses, but they were able to come to terms with a long-term contract with defensive tackle Justin Madubuike. They have him, Roquan Smith, and Kyle Hamilton in the 3 levels of the defense. And I think that they should be back again. So I do really like this Derrick Henry move. There's still more that they should be looking to do. They did also lose their starting guard as well. It was Morgan Moses. He went to the New York Jets, so a pretty nice addition there for the Jets, I might add. But the Ravens still should be in good positioning to contend again next season. So wanted to point all of that out. I also wanted to touch on the Houston Texans, who I did not have as one of my winners initially in free agency when I did the show yesterday. But I do definitely think they are in that light where at first they lose a couple of their young defenders, Jonathan Grenard and Blake Cashman, both go to Minnesota. But now they've done a really good job of adding additional talent, that now they basically swapped players when yesterday they signed Danielle Hunter, the edge rusher from Minnesota, who is coming off of a career high 16.5 sacks. So they give him the big bucks, $48 million guaranteed out of the 49 total. So that was definitely a draw for Hunter coming into this. But they were also able to add some really nice talent as well. If we want to stick with the defensive side of the ball, they added Azeez Al-Shaair, who I think has been a very underappreciated linebacker over the course of the past few seasons. I know that last year, of course, we had the matchup of Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner in San Francisco, but Al-Shaair was right on that same caliber of player, and the past couple seasons now, he has been in Tennessee and holding it down, I think, a fair amount, but just not really on a competitive team in Tennessee. But he finished probably also due to the fact that he was no longer with Fred Warner. He finished with a career high in tackles, and I do think that for Al-Shaair here, he can sort of rehone this energy where you look at him last year, it was a nice little reset for him where he was finally fully healthy, started all 17 games. The first time he started every game in his career, he was able to prove himself as a valuable player without the likes of a Fred Warner. He had the 5th most tackles in the NFL as a whole last year. He goes to Houston along with his running mate in Tennessee as well from last year in Danico Autry, who is another player. He's more so getting up there in age. He's going to be entering his age 34 season. But Autry also just came off of a career-high sack season where he had 11.5, and he is a big-time impact player on that front end that has a lot of talent. They already had the reigning defensive rookie of the year in Will Anderson Jr. They lose Grenard, which hurts at first, but they bring in Autry and Hunter, and they sort of revamp themselves in a different way. and I think that they will be a very effective defense, again, playing under D'Amico Ryans, who has really helped to, and credit to the front office as a whole, where they have been able to really turn this around. Nick Caserio running the show there as the general manager. This is a Texans franchise that for a long time was sort of sputtering, where if you go back, of course, a lot of complicated things took place with Deshaun Watson, but at first he was requesting a trade out of Houston even before all of the allegations came out, because the franchise was not willing to communicate with him in terms of coaching or anything along those lines. He was fed up with them and he wanted out in Houston regardless. And before that, they were paying these massive contracts to the likes of Brock Osweiler. They were unable to get their quarterback situation figured out for a handful of years. Matt Schaub, who had a fine career ultimately, but that was, the big time guy there in Houston for the longest time. And no disrespect to Matt Schaub, but definitely not a franchise level guy. The fact that Bill O'Brien was ever the general manager in the first place is just a crazy move to me. Gave him as much power as they did, but they have really been able to turn this thing around, including a move that I haven't even made yet, which was the fact that they were able to trade for Joe Mixon. The Texans were a team that I thought should be active in the running back market for as much money as they had, and having a young quarterback in Stroud, adding a legitimate running back to that offense should help him develop. Dameon Pierce just sort of fell off a cliff last year. I'm not really sure even how. Devin Singletary was fine. He was good down the stretch of the year, but Joe Mixon is definitely much more of an upgrade and should help this offense really piece itself together even more so. Ideally, you get Tank Dell back from injury, and CJ Stroud is able to continue developing into his sophomore season. Now, last couple notes here I wanted to touch on is the Philadelphia Eagles. I did not have them as a winner on day one of free agency. Now, they definitely won the headlines by signing Saquon Barkley to the deal that they did, over $12 million per season, which is a little bit steep, especially for an Eagles franchise that historically has been able to get production out of the position without having to necessarily spend the big bucks on it. So again, it felt like they did a good job, winning over the media, but I still had big time concerns with the defense. Now, they did some moves over the past 24 hours to help address that as well. Yesterday, we touched on the Bryce Huff addition, who could be an impact player for them. But yesterday, they also brought back CJ Gardner-Johnson. Gardner-Johnson was with the Eagles during their Super Bowl run a couple seasons ago. He signed in Detroit last season. He had his ups and downs during the year, so I don't think he's necessarily a tremendous player, but he is an upgrade from what the Eagles have going on. They were really walking the line of both ends of the spectrum in terms of their secondary last year, where they had a lot of unproven youth and they had a lot of age as well. So I think that this is a nice move to bring back CJ and try and get that second line a little bit more complete. And they also yesterday, or a couple days ago, brought back Brandon Graham. So they addressed the defense by some means. I still wouldn't consider them outright winners, and we have tons of free agency left, of course, so no team is winning the Super Bowl just based off of their free agency moves. I think that the Eagles should definitely be looking to continue to add on the defensive side of the ball as the offseason continues, but they did make some moves in the right direction to address the defense over the past couple days, so I did want to give them credit for that, even more so than for the Saquon Barkley deal, which has the most amount of people excited. But that is all we have time for on this subject. We are going to be taking a break, and when we come back on the other side, I want to talk about the Carolina Panthers, who have also been a big name in the national media and for a lot more negative reasons. So I want to address all of that. That is what we will be getting to when we come back on the other side of the break, so stick with us.